Hello, everyone, and welcome back to 305 Insights. I'm your host, Alan Somerton, and we are finally back. College football season is almost upon us, so it's time to start kicking off the summer series that I've done over the past few years. And today's first episode 2026 Coaches on the Hot Seats. On the hot seat. Multiple coaches, hot seats. Anyways, we're just going to do a top 5 list. And we're going to go a little bit in depth as to why I think each of these individuals are in trouble. I think we all know who number one is going to be, but we'll get to them later. And this is going to be the first part of a 3-part series where we're also going to talk about the best hires this offseason and the coaches under the most pressure this season. From there, we'll do our usual conference previews where we have the top teams, sleeper teams, teams in trouble, impact players, biggest games, and whatnot. And then we'll finish it up with a preview of the Florida State Seminoles and the University of Miami Hurricanes 2026 season. So, once again, first episode, 2026, Coaches on the Hot Seat. Starting off at number 5, we got Bill Belichick out of North Carolina. To me, after one season, it's clear that this experiment is a failure. You brought in Mike Lombardi as your GM, making him the highest paid GM in all of college football. He's out after an HR complaint. Freddie Kitchens was your offensive coordinator. He's out after 1 year. After a 4-8 season and swiftly transitioning from a transfer portal heavy team to taking on over, I believe it was 40 high school players in this upcoming recruiting class. You're doing massive pendulum swings in a sport that you can't afford to do that in. Is there going to be enough progress made as to where people will not view UNC as a laughingstock because of this decision to hire a 70-plus-year-old legendary head coach, but at the NFL level? And college football is completely different than it was 5-6 years ago. And I'm struggling to see where a lot of the wins are on this schedule. I mean, you've got the East Tennessee State game. Okay, cool. UConn won 9 games last year. And I'm not saying that North Carolina shouldn't have more talent than UConn, but is UConn the easy game that you expected it to be? Virginia, is that going to be a win? Pitt? Duke? I mean, even if you get all those expected wins, and again, I don't think they're expected, but even if you take these close games, UNC is looking like a 6-6 season, and sure, 4-8, 6-6, that's an improvement. But I think the bigger conversation with Bill Belichick is, how do the power brokers at UNC feel about him? The people cutting the big checks. Which way is the pendulum swinging for them? Do they wait it out and hope that this hire that they did pans out somewhat? I mean, you're looking at like a 4-year run in total for Bill Belichick probably before he retires and hands off the reins to his son. I think that's always been the plan. Will they be satisfied with the 6-6 progress? Or will the power brokers just not want to be embarrassed? Which side is it going to swing for the ego? Is it going to be stubbornness? Or is it going to be embarrassment? And I think that's the key here. Depending on how the team looks, are they a well-coached team? Is there discipline? And is it just a lack of talent? Or is it just this thing falling apart at the seams? It's going to be an interesting development of that storyline to see where Bill Belichick and company end up mid-season, end of the year, and whatnot. So I do think he's on the hot seat in the sense that I don't think he's going to get out of this mess. I think there's going to be more and more disarray within the coaching and leadership ranks of the football team. And I think that's what's going to push the check riders to move on. Number 4, I've got Luke Fickell out of Wisconsin, 17-21 off across his 3 seasons. And again, this was an interesting hire because you had the opportunity to hire a school legend in Jim Leonhard to be the head coach and to continue down that path of hard-nosed, rugged football. And the administration thought we need to go in a different direction because there's only so much of a ceiling with that. So they went out and they hired the guy in Fickell who led Cincinnati to a 57-18 record while he was the coach there. And that rubbed a lot of people the wrong way. But it was a good hire, make no mistake about it, at the time. The problem is the dynamics of college football have changed. The Big Ten used to be, on one side, you basically had Ohio State, Michigan, Penn State, and some years Michigan State fighting it out on their division to face off against, it was usually Wisconsin or Iowa. It was such an imbalanced league. And yet, as a Wisconsin head coach, you could say, oh, I won 8, 9, 10 games and made it to the Big Ten championship game. And therefore, a Rose Bowl bid or just, again, a general feeling of success despite getting trounced every time in the Big Ten championship game. You don't have that anymore. With the influx of teams that have come in with, from what used to be the Pac-12, it's hard for that what used to be that division to be successful in the Big Ten's current era. And Luke Fickell ran into that hard. Now, the school did pledge more money for the roster and other aspects of the football program. And with that, this year you need to have marked improvements. It needs to be shown. Indiana, Oregon, Ohio State, and Michigan are not on the schedule. The AD stepped down. They got someone from Texas to be the new athletic director. He wants to bring in that swag, a Texas swag, as he called it, even though, again, you invented swag. I think we all know that. But another thing that you have to consider with these athletic directors is they like having their job, but they also like putting their stamp on the program. Luke Fickell was hired by a previous administration. If he does not perform, this guy is going to want to make his mark on the Wisconsin football program. And Luke Fickell will be out. Minimum, he has to make a bowl game. And even then, is that enough? Not sure. Number 3, we go to Maryland with Mike Locksley. Consecutive seasons of 4-8 and a 1-8 record in the Big Ten has not allowed Maryland to feel good about the type of talent that they brought in and the type of teams that Locksley has built. It doesn't matter how well you're doing in recruiting and how well you're retaining players if the results aren't on the field. Back-to-back seasons of 4-8 and also 1-8 in the Big Ten, basically not really being competitive, is not a good look, especially in the DMV area where there is a lot of talent to recruit. But when you're going up against the likes of, just the major power brokers, I mean, you don't even have to think Penn State, you don't have to think Ohio State or any of that stuff in the sense of your fellow Big Ten opponents, Michigan as well. But you have to worry about Alabama, Georgia, Miami, USC. Well, USC is in the Big Ten, but again, power brokers in other conferences that want the 5-star talents that are there. Consistently going 4-8 isn't going to feed that pipeline into the school. They're going to go to other places that win. And despite Loxley's recruiting prowess, these kids still want to win. The schedule this year is a great draw, if you ask me. And you don't have games against Oregon, Indiana, or Michigan. You do face Ohio State and USC. Those are tough. But again, bowl eligibility is the minimum here. And I think the school would want a little bit more than 6 wins. You have talent there. Washington comes back at QB. You've got Zion Lee, who's one of the top prospects at defensive end. You're bringing back talent. You paid a lot of money to bring back talent. The results have to show on the field now. At number 2, out of Baylor, I have Dave Aranda. Since they won the 2021 Big 12 championship, he's 22-28. Again, he's running into the same issue as Fickle, where there's a new AD at the helm who's going to want to make his mark as well. DJ Lagway transferred into Waco, but will that be enough? You got matchups against Auburn, BYU, Texas Tech, Houston that are all bad matchups. Aranda's defense, which is what he was hired for, that was his specialty, has fallen the past 2 seasons. They've fallen all the way to 105th in points allowed, 29.5 points per game. It doesn't matter if Baylor has the explosive offenses that people have gotten used to post-Bryles if you can't stop a nosebleed. I do think he is a good coach, but again, in this NIL world, the disconnect between development and recruiting and paying is something that a lot of coaches still are trying to figure out on the fly. And unfortunately, a school like Baylor that doesn't have not only a rich history, but benefactors to really push the envelope to go for certain players. Again, DJ Lagway is, oh man, I don't want to bash the kid, but he's almost considered damaged goods at this point, where the luster of the 5-star recruiting label that he had and the results that he had in the SEC, the flashes weren't enough. Can you take advantage of that in the Big 12? Sure, but again, the gap between you and Texas Tech, the gap between you and BYU, again, even someone like Houston, it's too much. He's going to need a big season, and I'm not sure it's there. So I think someone is either next year going to have an opportunity to get a good defensive coordinator, and he can be one of those guys who just focuses on that and makes a lot of money doing that, as opposed to being a head coach. But I don't think Aranda's at Baylor next year. And number 1, again, if you listen to this podcast, you pretty much know who this is going to be. We're going to Tallahassee, FSU's coach, Mike Norvell. After going 13-0 in the regular season and 13-1 after the 63-3 drubbing in the Orange Bowl, Norvell decides to go on a revenge tour that lasts all of 1 drive in Ireland, and they proceed to go 2-10 in 2024. Now, was that an aberration? What went wrong? You let go a bunch of the staff. You brought in some new guys to try and bolster what talent was left in the roster. You start off strong. You beat Alabama and Tallahassee. You go to Virginia, lose in overtime. You lose to Miami. And then next thing you know, you're losing. It's 5-7 season. I thought he should have been let go after the Stanford game. There was no excuse to lose that game. and you found a way. And again, because I was at Stanford on the West Coast, I had to stay up till like 1:30 or whatever it was to finish watching that game. And it just the despair of realizing that they're going to keep this guy, just the general indifference in Tallahassee is remarkable to see. The only reason he wasn't fired is the amount of money owed to him on the rest of his contract extension that he signed when this administration believed that Alabama was going to sign him post Nick Saban. There was reports on it. There was shifting in betting odds, if you believe in that as well. But the more you dive into the reports post extension, post Kalen DeBoer going to Alabama, it's clear that Alabama was shooting for a different coach, and it wasn't Norvell. And unfortunately, FSU has paid the price. I would be surprised if he's coaching this team after Halloween. You got games against SMU, Bama, Louisville, Miami, and Clemson. And that's why I think the coaching change is going to happen mid-season. The reason why I would do it after Clemson is Boston College is the game right after, and that will allow the new interim head coach to, announce his presence with authority against a team that's going to be god-awful. If he's still there and they manage to lose to Boston College, I mean, that's a more fireable offense than the Stanford game last year. I just don't see a pathway for success with Norvell. And it's a shame because I really do believe that he would be at FSU for the long run. Extension, ignoring that part. But I think, I don't think he was like Jimbo, where Jimbo was begging for a lot of different things and he didn't get them, and he went to what he viewed as greener pastures in Texas A&M, despite winning a national championship at Florida State. I think Norvell would have stayed here for an extended period of time and been content with leading FSU to winning seasons. The only problem is he's content he's not content at losing, but I haven't seen results otherwise in the sense of recruiting, in the sense of retaining certain players, and in the sense of developing certain players. A fun fact, FSU doesn't have a single offensive lineman in their recruiting class next year. And if I'm not mistaken, unless something crazy happens, they are not going to have a 5-star, much less a 4-star talent out of the state of Florida in next year's class. This is Florida State, folks. That logo means something. But unfortunately, under Mike Norvell, and I believe I've said this on the podcast before, he runs Florida State like he's still at Memphis, his previous spot where he was coaching. This is Florida State. You get athletes here. You get top tier level athletes. You don't have to scheme your way to victory. You get the top tier talent and you inject it in your system and it takes it to a whole nother level. It truly is a shame because now you're being lapped, absolutely lapped by your biggest rival in Miami. And if you want to say, Florida's a more hated rival, okay, I can agree with that. They have more hope, and they've had how many coaches in the past 6 years? With Summerall at the helm, they have a recipe for a quick turnaround in the sense of how bad it was under Napier in terms of wins. If everything breaks right for FSU, they can go 8-4 this year. FSU's standard is you're winning a national championship. Not if everything breaks right, you're losing to Alabama, you're losing to Clemson, You're losing to Miami and you're losing to probably Louisville or SMU, one or the other. That's where this program has fallen over the past. And again, it's not entirely on Mike Norvell, but when you go 10-3 and 13-1, you've given off the impression that you've gotten out of the doldrums of what happened under Willie Taggart and the end of Jimbo Fisher. And again, we've said it on the podcast. There were cracks in the foundation when you were winning and you weren't getting great recruiting classes. The talent that you were losing out on, the KJ Boldens, the Keldrick Fox, the Travis Hunters, the amount of talent that could have gone through FSU that didn't is just absolutely fascinating. And when you have someone like Mario Cristobal in South Florida, who lives and breathes with recruiting and the physicality and creating a team in his image, and now you have the proof of concept over the past few years, you're not going to recruit. I'm surprised at some of the talent they have been able to get in the next year's recruiting class in 2027 because he's a lame duck. He's going to be fired. The fundraising isn't there because the guys writing the checks don't believe it's a good investment. There's no return on investment. I'm saying by Halloween, he's gone. If he can prove me wrong, cool. But again, this is a rudderless ship right now, unfortunately. And we need new leadership at the helm. Plain and simple. We'll dive into this more under the FSU review that we'll be doing, or preview that we'll be doing in the future. That's it for today's episode, folks. It feels good to be back. Feels good to recording. We're going to be pumping out more content in the future. Like we said at the beginning, got a lot of things going on for the summer series. We got to pump it out before the season starts at the end of this month. So looking forward to getting out all that information to you folks. And again, man, it's good to be recording again. So you guys remember the drill. Like, subscribe, follow, do all that stuff. We're on Apple Podcast. We're on Spotify. And you can find us on YouTube as well. So on any of those things, if you want, drop the like, leave a comment, leave some feedback. However you want to engage with us, it is much appreciated here. That being said, thanks for listening. Thanks for stopping by. And we'll catch you next time here on 305 Insights. Have a good one, folks.